Councilmember Sidney Katz to introduce himself. Sidney.
Well, I guess I'm not on mute. And I tell people that's how we start every conversation. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lorianne, and thank you, Crystal, for hosting this and for inviting me and everyone else. It really is a good panel, though I can't see everybody who's supposed to be on the panel on my screen. But I just wanted to start out by saying how proud I am that we can certainly lay claim to both Lorianne and Crystal because they either are continuing to work in the city of Gaithersburg where I was prior, or have worked and continue to work in a different way for the city of Gaithersburg. And always, whenever I talk about Crystal, it's always Crystal Townsend. I mean, I didn't meet her. I'm very glad that she's married and has a family, but I didn't meet her under this name, and so I have to go back and think about her name now. But just for those of you lucky enough not to know me, I'm the former mayor of Gaithersburg, and I'm the current district council member for the 3rd district of Montgomery County. And you ask about a water mug, I mean a coffee mug. I'm a water guy, and I brought my very plain keeps cold water for 24 hours or whatever it is, because our meetings seem to last that long anymore. And so, I am enjoying that. And for those of you interested, and I'll do this quickly, but the districts are going to change, and I know that my friend Marilyn Balcombe is on here, and she certainly is interested in the various districts for Montgomery County as well. But the 3rd district of Montgomery County includes Rockville and Gaithersburg, the town of Washington Grove, parts of Aspen Hill, Durwood, Redland, North Potomac, and all of Leisure World. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and I serve on the Government Operations Committee as well. And though I am the 3rd District Council member, we're certainly, all of my colleagues are very concerned about all of Montgomery County. So again, thank you for inviting me. And I'm introducing, I guess, Jeremy Criss. Is Jeremy here? I don't see him, but I know he's supposed to be here.
Let's see where Jeremy.
Thank you, Sidney. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Criss. I'm with the Office of Agriculture, and I want to also thank Lorianne and Crystal for inviting me. This is the first time I've been on the Breakfast Club. I'm really happy to be here with so many of my partners. Margaret Chasson from the League of Women Voters. The agricultural community has partnered with the League for many years on a number of initiatives. Heather Bruskin from the Food Council. Heather and her staff have been great partners with the Office of Ag. We've got 2 ladies that are representatives of the ag community here today. Tanya Spandhla from Seed to Passion Farm. She's one of our new farmers, a food producer. And then we've got Linda Lewis. Linda represents a family that's been farming in the county for more than several, I think 1820, I think, is when their farm first started. Linda was recently appointed by the county executive to serve on the Soil Conservation District Board of Supervisors. Linda also serves on the Montgomery County Farm Bureau. So both Linda and Tanya are really good representatives of the ag community. I'm glad they're here today. The Office of Agriculture, we're charged with promoting agriculture to make sure that ag remains viable in the county. The Ag Reserve was created for future food and fiber production. It's 41 years ago. I'm really fortunate to be here in the county. I've been here for over 3 decades, assisting the ag community and implementing a number of programs and services that I hope to discuss here today. So thanks again for having me, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Jeremy. Happy to have you here. All right, I think you're picking the next person, Jeremy.
And so, yes, hold on, let me see. I should have planned a little better.
That's okay. We have.
And I'm sorry,
Heather, I think.
Okay,
Heather,
so you're right.
Marilyn.
So I would like to introduce Heather Bruskin as the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Food Council. Heather has been just a pleasure to work with, and we've got a number of initiatives that we partner with them that we'll be talking about today, like the Farm to Food Bank program that we initiated during the pandemic. So Heather, I'm glad that you're here today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, Jeremy did the heavy lifting on my introduction. I'm so honored. Thank you very much for that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Heather Breskin, the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Food Council. So honored to be a part of this incredible panel this morning. Really looking forward to the conversation that we will have. And I'll talk more about our work later in the discussion, but just wanted to share my mug here, which says, here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And it's a gift from a dear colleague that I met as part of the COVID-19 response. And she and I both have often commiserated over how we balance parenting and the demands of the pandemic response effort. And so it holds a lot of coffee. It's got black coffee in it, which is the Breakfast of Champions. And I think the volume of coffee that it holds really speaks to how we were trying to get through the past year, and really just honored to be here today. So thank you so much, Crystal and Lorianne, for the opportunity. And I will send it over to Marilyn Balcombe.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Marilyn Balcombe. I'm the president of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. My mug this morning, if businesses have learned anything in the past year, it's the art of the pivot, right? And so my mug is Black Rock Center for the Arts, because they have done the greatest pivot of all time. They went from a wonderful burgeoning arts center to a food distribution hub, and they've done an excellent job, and they're a resource for our community. So here's to Black Rock, and here's to the pivot. And I will push it over to Emily, Delegate Shetty.
Where's Delegate Shetty?
Hey everybody, good morning. It's nice to be here with you this morning. I'm going to start out with my still too full cup of coffee, so I apologize if I'm a little groggy this morning. I'm still getting over session, just ending on Monday. But my mug is pictures of my son with his best friend, Esty, who we call our bonus baby. They have been best friends since they were 5 months old. They're 3 days apart, and they fluctuate between calling each other their brother and sister or future spouses, which is kind of funny. So, I am honored to be here with you today. We just came off of our 90-day session, which my good friend Delegate Moon colloquial said on the floor that he felt like this had been the longest session ever, and they're all supposed to be 90 days. Very excited to join you this morning to speak about some of the work that we've done at the state level to address climate change, and some of the work that I've been working on composting and green business. I represent Maryland State District 18, which is not Upcounty, it is Down County. We have Kensington, Garrett Park, Chevy Chase, Wheaton, bit of Silver Spring, and I'm honored to represent. I'm in my 3rd year of my 1st term, so I'm really excited to be here today to join you. I serve on the House Judiciary Committee. I'm a Deputy Majority Whip, and locally in the Montgomery County delegation, I chair the Education, Elections, and Housing Committee. So thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today, and I believe Mike from CCAN is on today too, so I will popcorn it over to him.
Right. Where's Mike at?
Mike, you're on mute.
As Councilmember Katz said, this is how our lives begin, whether we're on mute or not. Thank you, Delegate Shetty. My name is Mike Tidwell. I'm Executive Director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. And while I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland, my nonprofit is active all across Maryland, Virginia, DC. We have an office in Richmond and Norfolk. Here in Tacoma Park, staff of about 20, and we push for clean energy solutions to climate change. And it's just a real honor to be here. I've lived in Montgomery County for 31 years. My son went to Montgomery County Schools, greatest county in America, but I think we all agree there's more we can do to make it even better. My mug is this one, Go Nats, World Series mug from 2019. You know, back when life was really good and we didn't have all these really super giant problems. It seems like an innocent time when champions could be champions. So that's my mug, Go Nats. And I'll pitch it. Who's left? I have no idea. Someone help me.
Linda Lewis.
Yes, that sounds good. Whoever you said, sounds great.
Hi, I'm Linda Lewis. I don't even think I'm in the right place. I'm not in the right place for panels. You know how Zoom and farming don't work well together. But anyway, I'm Linda Lewis of Lewis Orchards. My husband and I run Lewis Orchards. We are a fruit and farm vegetable farm in Dickerson, Maryland. We currently farm about 600 acres. And I'm happy to be here. So I need to pass it off to someone else, correct?
Yes, I think
Tanya?
Spandhla.
Pat Van Lillen?
Tanya.
Tanya?
Tanya Spandhla. Here she is.
Hello, everybody. Just wanted to, first of all, say thank you so much for inviting me to be a participant in this discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce myself. I'm Tanya Spandler. I'm owner, farmer of Passion to Seed Gardening. As Jeremy said, relatively a new farmer, still learning, still experiencing good and bad together, but it works out to be a good way to learn. I started Passion to Seed Gardening in 2015 through the New Farmer project. I was glad, I think I must have been maybe the last person to be part of that group. But since 2015, it's been a roller coaster ride in a good way. I was able to get a grant from Montgomery County to enable me to set up some fencing. Since last year, I experienced a lot of GA infestation. So I always tell myself I'm in the right place at the right time. It's good to be a resident in Montgomery County because both local and state officials, they seem to be very cognizant of the importance of farmers within the county and I guess overall countrywide. So it gives me good motivation to be part of this agricultural community in the Ag Reserve. And I'm glad to be here and share my experiences with the rest of the panel.
All right.
And my mug is Passion to Seed Gardening. My son got this for me last year as a Christmas present. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Not sure who I'm supposed to pass it on to.
Oh, I think we
have Margaret left.
Margaret. Where's Margaret?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Margaret Chasson. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County. One of the things that the League does is to study local issues, and we form committees to address various topics. I've been studying the agricultural reserve for 40 years. So the Ag Reserve is quite familiar to me. I also serve on the Environmental Committee and several other committees of the League studying local issues. And we find that the goal of the League is to have informed participation in government. So we try to inform our members, and we have some 500 members in the county. and we try to inform the public as well. We have a website, and we used to be able to put information into local newspapers, but since local newspapers have gone by the by, we try to communicate via the internet. So we do have a team of members who try to attend or at least monitor what various committees of the county government are doing, as well as what is going on in the rest of the world. And of course, we also have a state level and a national level organization. So we're quite interested in the activity of the county government, and particularly in the my interest is particularly in the agricultural area. So for mugs, I have myself with my young son, and he put together this mug showing the same pose with his son. So,
so cute.
There we go.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for all of the wonderful introductions. We had over 100 attendees register for the breakfast this morning, and we had about a dozen or so questions submitted as well, in addition to the ones we had. So we want to get right into the questions that we have for our panelists this morning. And so we're going to get started with Mike Tidwell. Good morning, Mike. So your first question, can you tell us about the Chesapeake Climate Action Network's advocacy efforts on addressing climate change in Montgomery County? And how can our elected officials support green policies that facilitate these efforts?
Sure. Thank you again for having me, Lorianne and everyone. We know we're in a full-blown climate emergency. The county council declared there was a climate emergency in 2017 and set a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% in the county by the not so distant year of 2027. Those are pretty breathtaking goals set by the county council itself. Unfortunately, we have made close to zero progress, in my view, in achieving the reductions that the council is looking for. The good news is, during the session that just ended, as Delegate Shetty mentioned, we did pass something called Community Choice Energy that my organization worked really hard with Delegate Lord Charkoudian and the whole Montgomery County delegation. And basically what it's going to do is going to allow our county to take control of our energy destiny in terms of electricity, where we can pretty much consider everyone in the county opt into clean energy, and anyone who doesn't want the clean energy has to opt out. Usually it's the other way around with TEPCO. You get the dirty electricity unless you opt in for clean. So it turns the model on its head. Montgomery County is going to be able to do that as a pilot, and it's very positive. Beyond that, though, you know, I feel like our county has been very, very slow. We don't have a concrete legislative plan. Every day as we speak, there's some house or business adding a gas furnace to a brand new house that presumably is going to be there for 30 or 40 years. And we all know by our own county declaration that we want to basically be off of fossil fuels by the end of this decade. So we need to do things like ban the hookup of gas appliances in new buildings and just go all with electric, heat pumps, etc. So these are things that we need to start doing, mandating solar on new homes and businesses and things like that. So we have a lot we need to do. And also we need to figure out a way to allow our farmers to harvest sunlight in the ag reserve. More of the ag reserve is used to grow sod than table crops. It is not an agricultural ideal. It could be improved. And as climate change through flooding and drought takes more land out of circulation for our farmers, they're going to need something that they can harvest in addition to what they're growing now. And I believe that thing is solar. Unfortunately, the bill that was passed by the county council in February effectively, in my view, banned solar, and a lot of people disagree with that, but we'll see. If no solar gets built in the next 1 or 2 years, then we'll see whether it was a fair compromise. I'm pretty sure there will be no solar in Ag Reserve, and we need to come back and discuss this issue again and get a balanced, fair way to let our farmers harvest sunlight in addition to the other things they harvest.
Thank you, Mike. We're now going to, this is a perfect segue. Our next question is for our government panelists. So this is open to both Jeremy and to Councilmember Katz. Is what do you see as government's role in preserving the Ag Reserve and leveraging this resource to support our local food sources and production?
By my own problem here. Why don't I take this one first, Jeremy, and then you please jump in. I have to tell you, you have an absolute expert in, with Jeremy Criss on this call, and I know that Linda Lewis and I don't know Tanya as well, but I know Linda Lewis is living this every day, so I'm going to be as quick as I can on this. But candidly, the people living in the Ag Reserve and are ag leaders. They protect their natural resources. They have best management practices. They install and associate reductions of nitrogen and phosphorus and carbon dioxide. But the global pandemic certainly highlighted, which we all knew, but the global pandemic highlighted the amount of food insecurity which exists in Montgomery County. And there's those that don't want to believe that. They think if you go to Giant, then there's plenty of food. Well, there's plenty of places that don't have a Giant, and there's plenty of people that can't afford to go to Giant. So our farmers and area food banks such as Manna have truly stepped up in tremendous ways, absolutely tremendous ways to help people in Montgomery County. And through the food bank program, as of October 2020, it's my understanding, county farmers have donated over 50,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds of food, and that involved 22 farmers who applied for grants to increase growing capacity. And the 22 farmers that received the grants so far have totaled a little over $236,000. So I'm going to quickly pass that over to Jeremy and anybody else, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Sidney. So the Ag Reserve was created 41 years ago because our leaders wanted agriculture to remain as part of the landscape, as part of the economy, and just as part of the tradition of the county. And I came here just 8 years after the Ag Reserve was created. We have a legislative intent of the Ag Reserve where agriculture and farming are the preferred uses, and that all other uses in the Ag Reserve are secondary to farming. And that's important to understand as it relates to how the master plan was specifically written to ensure that ag is number one and everything else is number two. I think that we need to look at the recently passed solar's ETA. There is a requirement to study it in 2 years from now to see whether or not there are businesses that apply. But we're also, the county is developing a pilot to study agrivoltaic farming. This is something that's new to us. It's new to the Mid-Atlantic region. There are folks that have pollinator habitat that are located within the fence for the solar panels, but actually trying to grow things agronomically underneath the panels. This is where we need to have some additional technical assistance and education on. And the county has a pilot that we're going to be implementing out in Poolsville to try to demonstrate this. Some of the things that we do with promoting the Ag Reserve and the farmers, we promote our farmers markets. We have more farmers markets in Montgomery County than any other county in the state. We promote CSAs, community supported agriculture. During the pandemic, we've seen a real growth in the number of farmers that offers CSAs and also the food that's being produced in the county locally not only through the Farm to Food Bank program that Sidney mentioned, but also through on-site farm markets like Linda Lewis's and Butler's and several others. So the Ag Reserve, I just wanted to say the farmers are not opposed to solar. There's a number of farmers that have already implemented solar as the accessory level, which means they generate and consume a certain amount of electricity on the farm, and then the solar array is designed in accordance with that on-site energy consumption. And one of the positive things about the recently passed ZTA 20-01 in February that Mike's referenced is that it increases this level of accessory solar from 120% of the on-site energy consumption to 200%. So that's going to provide some opportunities for farmers to generate more energy through solar that can be used on their property to offset the energy that they're currently using. I'll stop there.
Gloria's on mute.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. So thank you, Jeremy and Sidney, for your responses. It's definitely important to leverage this resource Upcounty, and we appreciate all of the support, financial and otherwise, that you provide for this region. And so we wanted to now ask about the business side of things. So agribusiness, agro-tourism, they're not novel ideas. How can the county's Ag Reserve benefit from these initiatives? And this question is for Margaret, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the study that you're spearheading as well.
Well, I think that one of the valuable things that has come from the Agricultural Reserve is that people from the county generally are able to get a better understanding of what is the source of their food and what good natural food is. I know that in taking my children to Butler's Orchard to pick blueberries was an outstanding day for all of them, and it makes a difference when people down county understand the source of food, what is required to produce food, and how much work is involved in it. So I think that it is valuable not only to those who live in the county, but it is valuable to the down county residents as well, who have the opportunity to be somewhat exposed to agriculture. And the agritourism we've studied the agritourism plan, and I think there's some very good ideas in it. The idea of having a rural area where people can go to farms and see what is produced and how it's produced, and also enjoy the openness of an agricultural area is important. And we look forward to more development of the agritourism activities. We think it's important that the agritourism reflect agriculture, not that it take agriculture away. And likewise, with the advent of the solar proposal, it was to us very important that the prime land, the most productive lands in the county, not be given over to a non-agricultural activity, but that land be preserved for agricultural use. And we believe that the accessory use of agriculture in the agricultural reserve is very important, and we definitely support the idea of finding ways to encourage accessory agriculture, solar production in the agricultural reserve.
All right.
Thank you, Margaret. So as we're going deeper into some of this discussion, you know, it's so apparent how important policy is to really balancing all of these very high priorities for our community and coming up with that perfect, as I'm going to channel Councilmember Katz, he's always that consensus, right? What is that where everybody wins in the discussion? So I'm going to now direct this next question to Delegate Shetty. In this session included quite a few bills related to climate change and agribusiness. Can you speak to the legislation and why there was more interest in green business economy this session?
Sure. Thanks for the great question. And thank you again, everyone, for inviting me to join you this morning. You know, I think this session was incredibly productive, in part because, you know, the entire General Assembly was focused on this broader theme of addressing large systemic inequities, right? And many of these, as was referenced earlier in the panel discussion, were really laid bare during the pandemic. And, you know, I think access to food and some of our, you know, very immediate climate change goals were really like very evident during this past year. So I think, you know, our General Assembly, we have a supermajority of Democrats, although we have a Republican governor. I'd say that overall we do have, you know, a pretty good working relationship, even I'd say often bipartisan relationship on many environmental policies. But this session in particular was like really heavily focused on this broader theme of addressing systemic inequities. So although I don't serve on any of the committees that have direct jurisdiction over some of these policies, you know, I care deeply about them, as do many of my colleagues here in Montgomery County. So I was the lead sponsor on two bills that I'm really proud of. One of them was a first-year introduction and made it all the way through and is on the governor's desk now. And that relates to composting and really trying to incentivize and increase more composting here in our community. What we did was we sort of modeled it after 2008 legislation that passed that prohibits HOAs and common ownership communities from restricting a resident's right to compost. So the 2008 bill that passed is related to solar panel adoption, and that significantly increased uptake across the state of solar panels on homes. Our home that I'm sitting in right now happens to be one that we adopted, or we added solar panels to just a couple years ago, in part thanks to this lack of restriction that HOAs are able to put on homeowners. So I got this idea from a constituent who lives in a condo. He had a food scrap collection bucket. He happened to subscribe to my District 18 based company here, Compost Crew. And he had a food scrap collection bin on his balcony, and one of his neighbors was really upset and complained to the HOA, who started to fine him $10 a day for having this like tiny little bucket on his balcony. It's hermetically sealed, didn't attract pests, but you know, she didn't like it. And he felt really passionately that you know, he shouldn't be restricted from being able to protect the environment simply because he lives in a condo. I agreed with him. We proposed this bill and it made it through. So I'm really pleased that you know, his ability to compost will remain now intact. Separately, I had another bill that has passed now unanimously out of the House twice, but got stuck in the Senate again, I think just due to the broader politics around some of the larger climate change bills. But the second bill I had was a bill that builds on Montgomery County's very successful green business certification program and would establish a statewide similar program to really bring businesses to the table to help us address some of our large climate change goals that we have before us. So I think, those who are active in Annapolis saw, like, again, as Crystal mentioned, a large interest this session in addressing some of these really important critical policies. But I think in part due to some of the politics in the negotiations between some of the largest of the packages, some House bills just didn't quite make it through to the finish line on the Senate side. So I will be reintroducing that bill next session. Would love your support if that's something you're interested in. And very, very, very pleased that the community choice energy bill did pass. I think that's going to be a game changer. Montgomery County will yet again lead and will show this state how this is a successful model that could then hopefully be taken statewide.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Shetty, for sharing a bit of updates about statewide legislation. So that's going to affect the green business economy that is definitely growing in our county and state. So kudos to you on your progress. Now we're going to take a more local look. We are going to speak with our Executive Director of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber, and wanted to ask you, Marilyn, what role do you see the chambers playing in engaging farmers and in the agribusiness industry in general?
Sure, thank you. And this has really been a great panel discussion, and so nice to see familiar faces. So first and foremost, farming is a business, and we have to remember that when we think about agritourism and agribusiness. It is a business. And so in order to make sure that we have food on our tables, we need to make sure that farming is sustainable. And so from a chamber's perspective, we offer opportunity to network, we offer resources, but I think the biggest thing that we could offer, that we do offer farmers, is the availability for a sounding board. As I say to my members, everyone in the room is on a continuum of just starting out or have been in business for 30, 40, 50 years. Some businesses have been around for generations. And so whatever problem a business is facing, somebody in the room has already faced that problem, whether it's getting a loan for expansion, hiring staff, needing capital. If every business needs an accountant, needs an attorney, needs copy paper. And so what the chamber does is it provides these resources. And so for small farmers, it's basically an entrepreneurship, and it's lonely at the top, and many business owners don't have peers that they can go to for support. And that's the kind of community that we provide. We provide somebody to call up and say, hey, I got this issue. Can we meet for coffee and talk it through? And that's one of the things that we talk about. But I do want to stress the issue of sustainability. We get people come into the office all the time that say, I want to start a business. I have this idea. I want to have a brewery, or I want to have a wine tasting, or something. They have an idea, and you have to think about: is this a business, or is it a hobby, or is it a side gig? They really have to think it through, and that's one of the things that we help them do. And one of the first things I would say is contact the Office of Agriculture, and there's so many resources for not only starting a business, but starting a farm. And so we can help point people in the right direction, and connections. We make connections. So thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Yes, that's so vitally important, that necessary infrastructure And that capacity building is needed in all of our sectors. And Marilyn, thank you for the role that the chamber plays in doing so. And just as you said, there's so many needs that cross-pollinate the industries that are just basic, and how can those be leveraged to basically provide the foundations to grow. And that kind of leads us to our next panelist, Heather, who does this for our food sector through the Food Council. And so one of the pieces that, and I won't steal too much for thunder, but I do know a little bit about the Food Council's work. But you know, all the ways that the Food Council helps set the strategies, do those connections so that we can begin to address in totality through nonprofits and through our farmers and through our policies, how we can meet the food security needs. So the question that I have for you, Heather, is, you know, what are the Montgomery County Food Council's pillars, and how has your work with the Ag Reserves evolved during the pandemic, and what benefits do you see us moving forward?
Thank you so much, Crystal. And again, it's such an honor to be alongside so many of our partners on this panel and who are participating on this call as well. So the Food Council is a nonprofit organization. We're relatively young compared to a lot of our peer nonprofits in the community. So we've been around for about 10 years, and we serve as the primary connection point for businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, and residents around food system issues in our county. So we bring together over 2,000 local and regional partners by leading community-wide collaboration, advocacy, and capacity building initiatives. And that's all within the framework of addressing and promoting food justice. So our work cultivates a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable local food system by approaching food not from a siloed perspective, but rather a systems level, holistic approach, addressing food access for over 100,000 residents at risk for hunger, expanding food education opportunities for all residents, supporting our county's farms and food and beverage entrepreneurs, and addressing the impact of local food production, consumption, and recycling on our natural resources. So we have a small staff of 8, but we also partner with many different residents and organizations. We have 25 volunteer council members, including Tanya, who is on this panel today, our board of directors, and over 400 community leaders. We have 4 working groups that are open to the public and meet monthly and encourage anybody who's interested in these issues to participate. But we regularly also convene outside those silos to ensure that our programmatic and advocacy work is as collaborative, streamlined, and systems focused as possible. So just a couple examples of how we pursue our mission and achieve that vision, and some examples in particular from the pandemic response. We've been honored to be the county's partner in coordinating the food security response in the food access crisis that emerged out of the pandemic. So we've had the chance to partner with the county government, the Healthcare Initiative Foundation, and the Greater Washington Community Foundation to award over $2.5 million in grants in 2020 to both support the emergency food response of our community-based organizations that have been doing critical work, but then also build their capacity with the investments that will hopefully strengthen our food system and our local resilience in the long term. We've also been regularly bringing together partners on our community food security calls, which are every Monday or every other Monday now at 1 p.m. to build cross-sector relationships, recognizing that our residents who are experiencing food insecurity also likely need support with utility assistance or housing assistance or healthcare access. We also regularly engage with policymakers to shape legislation. And so a great example of this is that coming out of this legislative session, and thank you, Delegate Shetty and your colleagues for your leadership and the great work that you do on food issues at the state level to create a food council, statewide resiliency council related to food, to get to connect what we do and our colleagues across the state do at a state level, also building partnerships across agencies in state government. And then finally, what's most important as a pillar of our work is building community voice and leadership and providing opportunities to connect the expertise of residents who've experienced food insecurity and engaged directly in food issues to inform the policies and programs that are designed to support them. And so our Community Advisory Board program it involves 12 community leaders who have direct experience in food system issues to engage regularly, providing testimony and other insight to inform our political processes. So just speaking really quickly about our partnership with the Ag Reserve, Jeremy's been an amazing colleague and his whole team for many years, but the Farm to Food Bank program, which Councilmember Katz already spoke about a little bit, is an incredible partnership with the Food Security Task Force, the Greater Washington Community Foundation, but really led by the Office of Ag, Manna Food Center. And so big shout out to Jackie DiCarlo and Jenna Umbriak, who are on this call today, in partnership with the Food Council for this initiative that both supports the immediate access for local residents to nutritious, culturally appropriate produce, meats, and other products produced from 22 local farms, while also building the capacity of our farms long-term by buying these products from them at fair market rates, distributing them through our robust food assistance network, and awarding over $230,000 in grants to these farms to build their capacity, extend their growing seasons, increase their infrastructure, like their cold storage and refrigerators and freezers, to be able to hopefully invest in a stronger infrastructure to increase local food production in our county. And one of the key priorities of this program is to invest in Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned farms to address some of the systemic inequities and historically racist policies that have limited land access for farms owned by people of color, and hopefully invest in long-term affordable land access that will allow us to increase local food production in the long term. And so look forward to the continued conversation, and thanks for the chance to get to highlight some of these terrific partnerships today.
Yes, we are so appreciative of you, Heather. I think all of your food distribution events are some of the only ways we've been able to engage in public and interact with people at the food distribution events. So thank you for all you're doing to coordinate the food recovery in our county. And speaking of partnerships, we want to ask questions of our partners in the Ag Reserve. We have 2 farmers with us, and this question wants to learn more about farming, and wanted to ask Tanya and Linda, for those who are unfamiliar with farming in our county, what does the classification of soil mean, and how does it impact farming in the Ag Reserve, and how have you been able to partner with the food recovery efforts in our county during the pandemic? Next, Tanya, Linda, or Margaret? Are you on, is anyone on mute?
Okay, why did you give us farmers the hardest question here about soil? Am I right, Tanya? But that's okay.
Yes. I think so. I have to agree with you.
Or maybe Jeremy will help you out.
Jeremy is really good at helping us out in Ag.
Okay, I'll start off, Linda, with limited knowledge about soil. But I think the most basic thing that you need to do before you start farming is to have a baseline of the type of soil that you're working with. In that way, that's the only way you can learn what the soil is, soil deficiencies are. In that regard, then you know how to implement the enrichment of the soil. Because without a baseline, then you don't know what type of soil you're working with. You don't know what type of crops that can thrive in that type of soil. So I think it's just a basic guideline or baseline that you need to be knowledgeable of the type of soil you're working with. I think that's all I have about soil types. Yeah, Jeremy can always add on to it.
Well, let's let Linda go.
Okay, so I'm going to say, I know the best soils are class 1 and class 2. That way you can grow fruit trees, and you can grow blackberries, and then right beside that you can have soybeans, and then you can grow tomatoes, all in basically the same field if you so choose. And the soils there, you know what I mean, I don't even know what I was going to say now. The runoff's good. It dries well. I mean, those are the soils that all farmers are looking forward to. I mean, that's the best kind of soil, and those are the best kind of farming soils that you can have. I mean, we're lucky here. I mean, we don't have sandy soil, so I mean, it's just different soils produce different crops. Go ahead, Jeremy.
So soil capability classifications were established by the USDA, and the first soil survey for the county was done in the 30s. That was part of the Franklin Roosevelt. They were dealing with the Dust Bowl. They were trying to understand what are limitations of soils. So the classification system essentially determines what's the best soils that have the least limitations as compared to soils that have more limitations. So we have a system that's class 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2, as Linda indicated, are considered prime soils. Class 3 soils are productive. And then when you go from class 4 through 8 soils, those are more soils that have more limitations, more difficult to management. It might have more slope. It may have more gravel that would then allow the water to drain through the soils quicker as compared to, say, a soil that has like a loam or a clay type of content that would maintain soil moisture. As it relates to the solar's ETA, the council rightly chose to protect both class 1 and 2 soils from the placement of solar because, again, as Linda indicated, these are the best soils for growing crops. And so class 3 soils are still available for siting the solar, as well as class 4 and 5. And so we will be revisiting this policy on the solar in 2 years, but I think that's a good summary of soils.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. We definitely want good soil quality so we can continue to grow in the Ag Reserve. And quickly before we get back to our discussion, I wanted to highlight a few of our special guests that have joined us this morning. So we have Catherine Matthews, the Upcounty Regional Service Center Director. Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy. I also see that we have Jackie DiCarlo, Executive Director for MANA. We also have Lynn Arndt from the Black Rock Center for the Arts, who has now transitioned into the Upcounty Hub. Thank you for joining us. I also see that we have Nina Liakos from the Gaithersburg Huddle. And I also see that we have Andrew Sondry, who is now the Germantown president for their Democratic Club, and they're starting an Upcounty Breakfast Club. I also see we have one of our Central Committee members. Thank you for joining us, Scott Goldberg. And did I miss anyone? And we also have our Upcounty Advisory Board Chair, William Roberts. Thank you all for joining us. And if I missed you, please send me a message in the chat. And now we'll go back to Crystal.
Thank you. So this question is also for Jeremy and Councilmember Katz. Can you, we're going to go into some deeper level, some policy pieces. Can you tell us a bit more about some of the tax incentives available for non-ag reserve residents and how this works?
You know, I've learned a long time ago, when you have an expert on the call, there's no need for you to speak. And I always go back to the joke that a fellow that had lived through floods thought that he was an expert on floods. He dies, he goes to heaven, and St. Peter says, look, you can come in and give a speech on floods, but Noah is in the audience. So I just want you to know that. So with that, I'm going to call on my friend Noah, Jeremy Criss, please.
Thank you, Sidney. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to acknowledge a few things. First of all, Jackie DiCarlo and Jenna Emmerich are representatives of the MANA Food Center, and they're here and they're great partners. I've been so excited about the partnership that we have with them, along with Heather Bruskins and the Food Council with our Farm to Food Bank program. If anything we've learned in the pandemic, we now have camaraderie in the ag community like we always had, but it's in a different way. And so I'm real excited about the 22 farmers that have signed up for the Farm to Food Bank program. The other thing I wanted to say, Marilyn, the community support for agriculture, you're absolutely correct. Farmers do really well and that is farming, but sometimes they need the networks to be able to come together and talk about things and share train wrecks, share experiences. And so that really is very important. Tomorrow I'll be attending a Farmers Club meeting that's been in place for over 175 years here in Montgomery County. And they read the minutes from the previous month, they read the minutes from the previous year, and then they read the minutes from 100 years ago. And that is really fascinating to see how the people that were in the room 100 years ago, that's how all the road names were established in the county, named after the farmers. So I just wanted to say that real quick. But in terms of tax policies, let's just start with the agricultural use assessment, whether your farm is located up county or down county. If you're farming the property taxes will be lower for having the agricultural use assessment. So that's a very important tax policy that we're very fortunate to have here in Maryland. And we still have over 558 farms in the county. The ag use assessment is one of the reasons that helps keep the property taxes lower based on an ag use as compared to the highest and best use value. We also have the sales tax exemption for any agricultural products that are sold. Farmers don't have to pay the sales taxes on those products and report to the controller. We also have the urban agricultural tax credit. This is for properties that are down county that are not ag use assessed. If they make more than $5,000 a year in sales for the production, for the sales of products, they can get the urban ag use tax credit that reduces the tax bill for not only the property, but also the improvement by 80%. So I think that's a real quick summary of some of the tax policies that we have, but thank you very much on that.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy and Sidney, for your good expertise on relying on the experts that are around you. Thank you. So we definitely want to make sure that as we are supporting our farming industry, we're doing it in a sustainable way. And so I have a question for Mike. How can the Ag Reserve benefit from being involved in addressing climate change? And can solar be introduced into the Ag Reserve without undermining the importance of farming? And you can tell us a little bit more about that since.
Yeah, thank you, Lorianne. And this is a fascinating conversation. You know, we're one county, we're one big county. Things are complicated, and I get that, but I moved to Montgomery County in 1989, just the same decade that the Ag Reserve was started. And I think that if we were to create the Ag Reserve today in 2021, I think climate change would be part of the mission. You know, fighting climate change would probably be a core part of the conversation if we were starting the Ag Reserve today. I think that if we were starting it today, we would absolutely build in ways for farmers to generate not just accessory level solar for their own farms. That doesn't help the county reduce emissions. It doesn't do anything really for climate change. We would build in ways for farmers to sustainably harvest solar without compromising soils, without reducing the true food base of the Ag Reserve. And now we need to do that. We have to figure out a way to do it. And we have to be honest about what the Ag Reserve is and is not. It is not a huge source of table food for anybody, much less those of us in the county. And Councilmember Katz, 50,000 pounds, I said it, 50,000 pounds of food. I mean, we're a county of 1.1 million people. So that'd be 1 pound of food for 50,000 people for one day through the whole course of a pandemic. Obviously, we're not generating a lot of food. Again, more acreage is devoted to sod for golf courses and suburban homes than table crops. So I think that if we declared a climate emergency in 2017, an emergency. Now imagine if we declared COVID an emergency and then we did nothing about it for a year or 2 or 3. I think voters would be frustrated. And honestly, I think voters in the county are frustrated with the council and with our county executive because they declared an emergency and have done very little. And when we had a chance to do something, to really strike a balance, to put a cap on solar and ag reserve, no more than 2% of the reserve could be solar, period. And that it had to be community solar, meaning that a lot of it would go, you know, we talk about sustainability and justice. Those words have been circulating a lot in this conversation. The community solar part would send a lot of that solar to low and moderate income folks. So we declared an emergency, but the council effectively, in my view, and again, when we don't have solar in the next year or 2, it'll seal the deal, that it was a de facto ban. So it's tragic to me that solar apparently is more controversial than growing sod. 70% of all the crops in the ag reserve go for the, I think, admittedly unsustainable regional livestock industry. It goes to feed pigs and cows. And so solar is more controversial than those crops. And it just doesn't up. It's either it's a climate emergency and we've got to figure it out to allow our farmers to sustainably harvest sunlight because more and more of their land is being flooded and subject to drought. And frankly, until we actually start reducing emissions in our county, we can't claim that we're getting anything done. And so that's why I hope that we can come back soon and this balanced approach to solar, no more than 2%, not on class 1 soils, and that it would be community solar to go to moderate and low income residents. I think it's a beautiful and perfect balance. And if we were reforming the ag reserve today, I got to believe that's the way we would do it out of the gate.
Can I jump in, please?
Yes, I was actually going to cue you up, Councilmember
Okay,
Katz.
thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
First off, Mike, and I appreciate your passion, and we're going to agree to disagree. But I wanted to point out about the 50,000 pounds. That was donated. That was donated food. That wasn't 50,000 pounds that were grown. Just that was, not the only things that were grown in Montgomery County. So I think that has to be noted. And I've lived in Montgomery County my entire life. I know Dr. Hansen when he was the father of the Ag Reserve, and you said if we did it today, we wouldn't do it today. There is no way, in my opinion, that people would have come to the Montgomery County Council and said, you know what, this is a good idea. Let's preserve 1/3 of Montgomery County. There's families. Linda Lewis's family. I mean, the place where my home is was on Herman Rabbit's former farm. And those of you who know the history of Gaithersburg know he buried money in the ground here. I can tell you that if you knew Herman Rabbit, he knew where every dime was, and we haven't found any of it since he left this earth. But the bottom line is that the Ag Reserve is a jewel. Underline the word jewel in Montgomery County, and we need to preserve our jewel. Having said that, my office, and as you very well know, Mike, was deeply involved with protecting the Ag Reserve during this solar energy discussion. And the people who have the properties, the 558 people that own farms in Montgomery County were part of the discussion that we wanted them to be in. They weren't earlier on, in my opinion. So we asked that we have a task force. Hans Remer, Councilmember Remer, and I were certainly on different sides of this issue. He's my friend, he's my colleague, and we didn't agree on this one. We agree on other things. And I said, look, let's have people on both sides sit down, roll up our sleeves, see if we can find a solution for this thing. And we have found a solution. And I know that you do not believe that there's going to be solar. I believe that our good friends in the Ag Reserve are going to find people and are going to do solar. And if the industry that as it exists today doesn't want to work with them, then maybe we need to create other people in the industry to work with them. Because I think we need to get it done. Prior to this legislation, it couldn't be done. Now it can be. It's been 3 weeks since the legislation actually went into effect, or a month or whatever it is, and we did not solve it in the last 3 weeks. I will give you that. But give us time, and give us a Jeremy, Criss, and Linda Lewis's and Tanya and everybody else to sit down, roll up their sleeves, and come up with solutions rather than say, well, you know what, this just isn't going to work. Because let me tell you, the worst situations that I've ever been involved in, when people are willing to really listen, not just talk, but really willing to listen, you can come up with solutions. So thank you.
Let me just add that several solar companies have already left Montgomery County after the ZTA vote. So you're right. It's only been 3 weeks and already solar companies are leaving. They've been very vocal that this is a poison pill. This is a ban. So, and I don't think we should blame the solar industry. If there's no solar in a year or two, small solar integrated with crops, if there's no solar in a year or two, I don't think we blame the solar industry and say they don't want it bad enough. I think we should look at the policy.
Well, that's fine, Mike, but let me tell you, if you leave, then that doesn't mean you're trying to solve a problem. If you really want to solve a problem, you don't leave, you stay and you work through it.
Wow.
Well, as we heard earlier, that agriculture is a business first and foremost. So, you know, solar, harvesting sunlight on a farm is a business. These are business people making business decisions to leave the county after the ZTA vote.
Thank you, Mike and Sidney, for your passionate responses. I know that this is such an important topic, and we definitely want to transition to some of the benefits that we've seen from the Ag Reserve during the pandemic. And Heather, I know we mentioned the contributions of the Food Council during the pandemic, and just wanted you to weigh in and clarify on the contribution and how we can better ensure the Ag Reserve is being utilized to meet our county's food security issues, and how we can create a more sustainable distribution hub, delivery, coordination within our community.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I think it's something that we are really actively planning for and thinking about is how we take our lessons learned from the pandemic and transition to long-term strategies and solutions, both to increase local food production as well as address the anticipated sustained increase in food insecurity in our communities. Even though some of the numbers in terms of infections and deaths are very critically going down, the economic impacts of the pandemic will likely last for years to come. And so I think we really are looking at how we can build our systems better to support food security in the long term. And so I think the Farm to Food Bank program is a perfect example of one specific really successful partnership for how we can do this. But just wanted to highlight first some suggestions on how we can support food production in our agricultural reserve, because what we saw early in the pandemic was that our typical sales pathways for our food producers, and that includes our farms, disappeared. And so we had, I think that, the media was showing images of plows being fields being plowed under and products that were going to waste. And this was at the same time that donations and other resources that were going to our food assistance providers were dramatically decreasing. And so there are ways that we can support our local producers while also bringing that food into our food assistance pipeline. So I think investment in our local food production is absolutely critical, and that can happen in a wide variety of ways. Certainly investing in infrastructure, as we did a little bit with the Farm to Food Bank program, but significantly investing money in our farms. And I recognize and appreciate Mike's comment that there's not a lot of food that's currently being produced in our agricultural reserve, and that is a truth. And you know, from my perspective, that's something that we don't have to accept as a permanent reality, but rather something that we can address through policy change and investment as well. So certainly investing in infrastructure, investing in staffing to support everything from coordination to training. And so our Office of Agriculture really needs support in order to have more people who can support the many different things that they're tasked with doing. So I think that's something that is going to be critical to long-term success of agriculture. And purchasing is being a partner both through county government as well as other local institutions in buying from our farms. And that's something that the Food Council has been advocating for a very long time, is making fair price purchases from our farms to give our producers a committed sales pathway for their products, and also showing that their products, even it's impossible for them to be competitive on the fair market with wholesale products that are coming from far outside the county. And so showing that by making those sales investments, we value the products that they're making. And I'm excited that it's a very small step, but in Montgomery County Public Schools this summer, for the first time, we'll be sourcing potatoes from a county farm. And it's, again, a small purchase, but we hope that some of these steps, these small steps that we're making during the pandemic, can grow to long-term strategies. And those investments need to be paired with policies that allow our farms to take advantage of revenue generating opportunities, everything from agritourism to things like compost production, and also making sure that we have policies that allow them flexibility in their operations. There's been a lot of conversations around how their ability to transport and take products like compost and have it delivered onto their farms is really limited by some of the rules that we have for use in the Ag Reserve. We talked already about access to land. That's a really complicated one to unravel, but there have to be ways that we can find and support affordable long-term land access. If our farms are making investment in in the infrastructure that they're putting on a farm, they should be able to keep access to land for the long term. And then also just in general, giving residents the opportunity to grow their own food as well. And I just want to say hello to Michelle Nelson, who runs our amazing community gardens program in the county. And we regularly hear from residents about how they know the types of food that they want to eat and want to have flexibility and what they can grow on their own property or in their communities. And so making investments to allow them to do that work too is really important.
Thank you, Heather, so much. Excellent points. I want to turn this over to Marilyn for a second to also kind of talk about from the business perspective. You know, things it has been brought up in by several of the panelists that, you know, farming is a business, and I was wondering if you have heard from your networks, you know, some policy challenges or things that we could do to make sure that we are providing a very friendly environment for our business partners in the farming community, and what have been some of their concerns or things that are on their wish list that we should be keeping on our radar as we continue to explore how to grow and support our agribusiness.
Sure, thanks, Crystal, and great segue because Heather mentioned it. County purchasing. I mean, if the county could do one thing to help farmers, it's to purchase food from farmers, and I think that that's something that would be excellent. And the Office of Procurement has done just a phenomenal job recently in the past couple of years. They've really overhauled the department. So I think that that's one issue, certainly, is purchasing. But I also think that the general concept of shopping local, that's something that we certainly support, of course, but there's an educational campaign, and one of the panelists mentioned it early on, really educating the entire county of the value of the Ag Reserve. Even though I live I'm in Germantown, we abut the Ag Reserve. I love it. We've been here for, you know, over 25 years. But the rest of the county has to understand that and has to commit to shopping local when it comes to food and agritourism, that type of thing. So I think that the county could play an important role in funding some of those initiatives, and it does. The farm tour is an excellent way to bring the entire county to all the farms. I see Woody on the call. That's one of my favorite stops on the farm tour, Lewis Farm as well, Lewis Orchards. So I think there's that educational piece. Supporting the Office of Agriculture and letting the rest of the county understand how important that is. So those are some of the things. And I also think that the aspect of, and Heather mentioned it as well, access to land, right? And how to get farmers, new farmers invested. The federal government has significant programs. And I think that that's something that would be great to see how we could get people into farms and hold on to their farms. And again, I just go back to sustainability. If people are trying to make a living farming, it's got to be sustainable, and I think the county can help that. And I also just want to plug the concept of the county the county government is big and sometimes complex, and the easier the easier it is for a business, the better it is. Businesses want to know two things: how much is it going to cost, and how long is it going to take, right? They need certainty, and the county could help do a better job of kind of cutting through the red tape and working through that. And I have to say, kudos to our council, our county executive, and the Office of Procurement. We've seen significant improvement in the last few years. So I could go on, but I won't.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. And so I think that is a good way to transition. I feel like we've gone full circle in this discussion. And so I think we can all agree that Montgomery County's 93,000 acres of ag reserve, when it was envisioned and created in the 80s to preserve farming, is still important. And how we view farming and what we view as farming is definitely continuing to evolve, but it still is considered the green lung of the county and water filter for the region. Its forests absorb CO2, and its permeable surfaces allow for reabsorption of significant rainfall events. And so we definitely want to focus on sustainability and how we can preserve this county gem. And so in the final 7 minutes, I wanted to quickly do a round robin with all of our panelists. If you can each give your closing remarks and a call to action for all of our participants would be appreciated. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank Councilmember Glass for sending his staff to join us in his absence. So who wants to get started?
I can kick off, if that's okay.
Delegate Shetty, yes, please.
Thanks. So I've learned a lot this morning, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to join you all. As I mentioned at the start of my comments, I have a 5-year-old son, and we spend a lot of time doing agritourism in the Upcounty, visiting our local farms, picking fresh fruits, and he is himself a little gardener in training. So I just want to add as my call to action that, as each of us know, we all play a really critical role in each of these policies that we've spoken about, supporting our local businesses, our local farms, and individually trying to really turn the tide and make an impact on some of our county and state's climate change goals. So to the extent that your family is able, encourage you to look into composting and solar and and supporting our local farmers through farmers markets and visiting the farms directly. It's like the very least we can do to support our communities. And just want to extend another thank you to all of our partners here, from MANA to the Food Council, for the tremendous amount of work that they've done during the pandemic. So many members of our community are really struggling, and they have stepped up significantly to help meet their needs. So thank you to all, and really grateful again to join you this morning.
Thank you, Delegate Shetty. All right, who's next? Heather, do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. So I often get the question of how did my counseling background translate into the work that I do now? And I think it's so often we forget that an action is listening. And that's something that is so important in the work of the Food Council, and something that I strive to do regularly in my professional work is listen to our colleagues. And I encourage everybody to connect with your food producers wherever you can, and have conversations, ask questions, and listen about what are the challenges that they experience in their work, what are their perspectives on all of the issues that we've discussed here today, and then translate what you learn to inform advocacy and policy work in the county. Our elected officials, I so honor and appreciate their leadership and their partnership in their work, and so much both Delegate Shetty and Councilmember Katz have done so much work to support our local food system. But they expect me to come and talk about food and talk about these issues. But we really need everybody in our community to use their critical voices to weigh in on the importance of everything from land access to investing in local food. And also that we appreciate the work and the leadership that our elected officials provide to move these issues forward. So thanks so much for the opportunity to get to weigh in there today. And I hope to see everybody at Lewis Orchard's on-farm market and the farmers markets, and a lot of our local food businesses.
Thank you, Heather. So now we'll hear from Margaret.
The League of Women Voters is committed to informed participation of people in their government. And one of the things that we try to do is to provide information to the public and to our membership so that they can participate in an informed manner. And we feel that it is important that people understand the many contributions that the Agricultural Reserve has made to the county, both in terms of providing clean air and good food. And we certainly will continue to provide information to the public about the reserve and the importance of it in its many roles. And one of those roles that we strongly support is the role of keeping the community safe. We want to have good food, we want to have good air, we want to have the opportunity for something other than city living. And we think that it is important to preserve the reserve.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, do we still have Linda or Tanya?
Yes, I guess I would just keep it with just maybe one or two sentences, but this year I would like to say I'm going to be growing produce at Passion to Seed Gardening with a purpose. And that's my main motivation, being able to grow produce, fresh produce that can be distributed among residents of the county through the MANA food program. and that's fresh food. We're not talking about food that's been driven over hundreds and thousands of miles from somewhere to come to Montgomery County and be sold or given to people. This is fresh food coming straight off the farm. So this is a great motivation for me to be able to participate into this program, the Farm to Food Bank program. It just gives me a great pleasure to be able to, be contributing in a small part, but in a very meaningful way. I would also like to acknowledge Delegate Shetty. When you were discussing about the composting, I have my own little bin as well on the counter. And prior to this pandemic, whenever I would visit friends and I would see them trash all the recyclable kitchen scrap in the trash can, then I would just stock them right there. And when I would visit next time, I would see them that they have their own little composting bin on the kitchen counter. So I'm very glad that at least you've been following up on this and making it a priority that we have composting, because there's so much wastage that's going around that can be repurposed in some of these farms and other areas where it can be used. I just wanted to give an acknowledgement again to the county for the assistance that they are giving to the farmers. I'm sure there is a lot to be done in terms of land accessibility. Currently, I lease farmland in the Ag Reserve, a family farm, and been there for the past 5 years or so. We've built a very good relationship with the landowner, but eventually, you have that at the back of your mind that if you want to grow in this type of business, you need a certain piece of land that you can say, okay, this is mine. I can do some structural improvements and know that they are going to be there for you to stay and maybe for future generations. So I'm sure with the openness and the support that Montgomery County has for its farmers, that could be an item line to be looked into further down. But just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a participant.
Tanya, thank you so much for joining us. Councilmember Katz, do you want to go next?
I do. Thank you. And I just want to say, as for a call to action, I believe that knowledge is power, and I think today was an example of trying to get some knowledge, and we need to work together. We need to educate each other. We need to Montgomery County can do it all. We really can. And I did want to point out that we were talking about all the good things that procurement has done in Montgomery County in the last couple of years. And I'd be remiss, and if she weren't here, I still would say this, but Emily Shetty's husband, Ash, has done an unbelievable job. And we could spend the 90 minutes on how impressed I am with him. We really could. I won't. And I did want to say very publicly to my friend Mike, who obviously we're not exactly on the same wavelength here this morning, but my office stands ready at any time to work with him and Jeremy and Tanya and Linda and everybody else to actually prove that we can do it all. We would like to have solar in a better way in the Ag Reserve and other places in Montgomery County too, not just in the Ag Reserve. And my office stands ready to work with him and the industry as best we can. So please do not stand on ceremony. Contact us and we will set it up to actually get this done, that we can turn to the rest of Maryland and say Montgomery County got it right. Thank you very much. And I look forward to working with you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz, for joining us. Next, we'll go to Linda.
I just want to call, as a farmer, thank you, Tanya, because you said basically what I was going to say. My call to action is to feed the hungry in Montgomery County or in the state, in the country, wherever we can feed hungry. I mean, a lot of people, we are fortunate to live in Montgomery County. We're fortunate to do it. So that's my call to action, to feed the hungry.
Thank you, Linda, for all you're doing to feed the county and bring farm to table food throughout the county. We appreciate your contributions, you and Tanya. Next, we're going to go to Marilyn.
Well, I can't beat that, Linda. That's perfectly stated. I would say call to action from policy perspective. This has been an excellent discussion, and we need to have this discussion countywide. I know that we have down county people on the call. That's great, but this is a countywide discussion. So that would be one. But from a personal perspective, I think we want to make sure that people know where their food comes from. And that's something that most people go to the grocery store and buy their food and never even think about where it comes from. So we have the options of a CSA, of farmers markets, the local, even the major grocery stores many have local produce available. So I think if we can all just think about where our food comes from and shop local, shop local, shop local.
Thank you, Marilyn. Next, we'll go to Mike.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and I agree with you, Councilmember Katz, that knowledge is power. And I mean, I think the biggest frustration of those of us, not just down county, but some farmers up county and solar companies who are truly dedicated to sustainable solar. The biggest frustration over the solar conversation is we didn't get a chance, in our view, to really experiment with creative compromise on this issue. And that was our biggest frustration. So we'll see what happens in the next year or so. I do believe we obviously will come back. We don't want to just put solar on a small part, a 2% cap in ag reserve. We need it on rooftops. We need it at Dickerson and on our landfills. We need all of it. I will say that, Joe Biden is, he's wildly exceeded a lot of our expectations in terms of his leadership, not just on climate, but lots of things. But he's committed to 100% clean electricity throughout the United States by 2035 and 80% by the year 2030. So in 9 years, our president wants 80% of our electricity in Maryland across the country to come from non-carbon emitting source. So we got to get ready. We got to figure these things out. We can't have blanket exclusions of certain types of clean energy in certain areas. And so that's what I am very much looking forward. I'm discouraged that we've had a delay here on this, but I'm optimistic that I know we will figure it out.
Thank you, Mike. And lastly, we will have Jeremy before closing remarks.
Thank you very much. My call to action is to acknowledge our farmers, not just Linda and Tanya that are here as panelists, but to acknowledge how Montgomery County farmers, we have so many reasons to be proud of them. We've got between 15,000 and 20,000 acres that's planted in cover crops annually, and the amount of carbon that is sequestered is second to forestry, the total acres of forestry in the county. So that's a significant. I want to acknowledge Montgomery Countryside Alliance, and Lee Langstaff is with us here today. Montgomery Countryside Alliance has a land link program that has been very successful in linking interested farmers with interested landowners. So we're really happy to partner with MCA and work with the farmers that have located on properties. I want to acknowledge Councilmember Evan Glass for the composting ZTA that was passed back in February that's going to expand the amount of off-site materials that are going to be allowed for composting. Earlier, we referenced the compost crew and the compost crew outpost that Ben Perry's promoting on additional farms beyond the 1 acre farm. I'd like to acknowledge the support for our local farm food economy. We had Topay here from the Dodo Farm, and we have Woody Woodruff from Red Wiggler. Topay participates in farmers markets, and Woody has one of the largest CSAs in the county. So lastly, I just want to say that the Office of Ag, I'm very thankful for all of the positive points that have been brought here today. I'm proud of what we do in the Office of Ag. We've got a matching grant program that has really expanded in FY21 during the pandemic, and we're going to be demonstrating that to the County Council on April 22nd during our Fed Committee work session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you again to all of our panelists and for all of the incredible calls to action you have left us and our attendees with. We do have quite a few questions that we didn't have a chance to get to. And so we hope we can send these to our panelists and then send them out to our attendees afterwards. And so I will close with my incredible co-host. Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining me and co-hosting this wonderful panel discussion on this important topic.
Thank you. I have to say our panelists made our job very easy because we had set a set of questions, but you guys not only answered the questions, but really took us down into really deep conversations that I think really showed areas of growth that we need to make. And big things that I wanted just to capitalize that came through and resonated is just the equity piece that resonates with farming and our environment. And that you know, from the Healthcare Initiatives Foundation's perspective is that food and environment are social determinants of health. And if we don't invest in these areas strongly, then we're not going to be ensuring the health and wellness of our community. And that's why we have made tremendous amount of investment and partnership in this work, knowing that it is truly an important factor if we're going to ensure that our residents have the ability to thrive and excel. And so this has become even more resolute during the pandemic, where we have seen, I know Councilmember Katz mentioned that many people don't fully understand the scope of our food insecurity, but where we have seen just inexplicably the amount of numbers of our families and our children that are hungry each day. And so all of us coming together to find out how we can utilize our resources that are a treasured value to help meet this growing, ever-growing need, not only just for now, but as we come out of the recovery process. So this ongoing lens of how we're addressing this will be paramount, I believe, for the next 2 to 3 years. And I wanted to also point out, Chester's put in the chat a report that HIF helped co-invest with Farming at the Metro's Edge in 2013. And many of the issues in that report were still brought up today. And so I thought, you know, my call to action is maybe we look at doing a new Farming at Metro's Edge report to really look at what the needs are and kind of channeling what Mike was saying about putting in really these climate pieces too, and then the new initiatives that are coming forward with composting and solar energy and the new making it revised. So if we could make that a new call to action, I would love to help spearhead that as well. So thank you all.
Thank you so much again, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much again for joining us this morning to get your day started. And kudos to everyone in our Ag Reserve, our County Council, our business industry, and our nonprofits. We all are working in partnership to make our county an even better place to live, work, play, grow businesses. And so this is just the start of a very important discussion, an ongoing discussion. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. And thank you especially to Lorianne and Crystal. Have a good day. I got to go to another Zoom. Hard to believe.
Sure. You're not moving.
Bye.